The Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 has gotten more attention in recent weeks for its right-wing policy proposals designed for transfer of power should Donald Trump or another Republican win. The conservative think tank's 900-page plan outlines policies that put forward a governing agenda that details conservative priorities should a Republican win the White House in November.
The president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, is turning heads for his comments on the project. Here's a quick clip from his appearance on right-wing outlet Real America's Voice Network. Take a look.
That we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
He also went on to say to viewers that, quote, "We are in the process of taking this country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning." So very interesting. We talked to Tom Jones on the program with the American Accountability Foundation, who received a $100,000 grant from the Heritage Foundation. That was a really interesting interview. But it doesn't seem to me that Project 2025 has the support of all Republicans. I'm curious, Amber, what your understanding of that is. Is this something that, Republicans are in lockstep with, that they really support Trump making this his platform?
Well, I know that Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. This is an independent project by the Heritage Foundation. And Trump himself has sent out multiple indications that he does not actually appreciate outside groups trying to create policy platforms for him because it gives the impression that he supports all of the things that are on it. This applies to groups like America First Policy Institute as well as the Heritage Foundation. Both of those have been sort of chastised by the Trump campaign. But I think, what's more important in Project 2025 outside of the policy proposals is probably the staff vetting project. They are basically taking applications and resumes from, I believe, tens of thousands of individuals who would potentially be called to serve in a Republican administration and making sure that those people abide by certain conservative principles and values. I think if Trump were to win office, that would probably be it would probably be something that he would be more interested in aligning himself with or using as a tool to staff an administration than he would be necessarily looking at the Heritage Foundation for exactly what policy positions he's going to take in office.
Yeah, I think my concern with it is that it seems from what Tom Jones said that a lot of the positions that they're targeting, I can't speak for the Heritage Foundation, but of course the Heritage Foundation's funding the AAF. And so I would assume that this is a part of the Project 2025 agenda, but the assumption that they would produce a list of people within various departments that are regulated by Congress, that are not official appointments from the president, and it would be a clear overstepping of power for the executive branch to decide that they have say over what Congress has the final say over. And so I think that's what I'm most afraid of. And that's what I would most challenge from these people. So that statement that we're having a second revolution and that it will be bloodless if leftists allow it to be, or the left rather allows it to be, I'm curious what the threshold for that is. Is it that the left has to initiate violence, or is it that the left has to get in the way of their agenda, which it seems that there's constitutional legal grounds to get in the way of that agenda. And so it's very concerning to hear a statement like that as someone who's on the left. I would hope that Donald Trump would distance himself from it, given that statement we heard that's really just making waves this week.
Yeah, I know Kevin Roberts fairly well. I know he responded to the criticism of that comment on his X account. He said the following: Americans in 2024 are in the process of carrying out the Second American Revolution to take power back from the elites and despotic bureaucrats. These patriots are committed to peaceful revolution at the ballot box. And he went on to say, unfortunately, the left may not allow a peaceful transfer of power. As we saw in 2020, organized groups on the left have the capacity to riot violently, take over cities, target Supreme Court justices with violence and death threats, and weaponize taxpayer-funded agencies to target their political opponents. So I think what he is getting at in that comment that he made on Steve Bannon's War Room is that he believes that the left could react violently if Donald Trump wins office. We did see riots after he won the first time around in 2016 on Inauguration Day. So I took that comment as a comment meant for in self-defense and not that they're going to use violence to carry out their agenda against people who are behaving peacefully or just peacefully protesting. At least that's what I would come to understand just knowing Kevin Roberts as a person. I would also say on the question of their goals for ridding the federal bureaucracy of individuals who are committed to opposing political agendas that they don't like. I mean, I think that is more democratic than the alternative, which is that you allow people who are unelected, who are call themselves civil servants, working to undermine the policies of an individual who was elected, the president, and the cabinet officials that he selects to carry out his policy agenda. And unfortunately, it has been the case that there have been federal agencies and employees within who have done intentional undermining of Trump's agenda the first time that he was in office. I mean, we had people writing op-eds about it in the New York Times. It's not just something that they're worried about, but something that has happened in the past. And I don't think it's unreasonable to say that if people are not willing to do their job, which is to carry out the policies of the executive branch, then they shouldn't have a job.
I think it's very interesting that the framing from Project 2025 executives like Roberts is that they see this as taking the government back from the elites. And this is, so in support of a candidate who decided to cut taxes permanently for corporations, allowing their profits to increase 50% while most Americans are struggling to make it paycheck to paycheck, to defund the Board of Education. That would severely harm working families that depend on public schools to get by. And so I think it's dangerous to say that our goal is to take the government back from the elites, when in reality, this would be a huge power grab for the elites. The people that support the Heritage Foundation are some of the wealthiest people in the country. And a lot of these policies that they've put forth on their 2025 platform would really hurt everyday working people and would benefit people who own large private companies that would have to step in and fill the gap when you gut public programs and public goods. And so that's, if you're someone who supports populism, if you're someone who's questioning the elites, you should also be questioning Project 2025, because having someone come into public office as the president and have the power to simply fire people or intimidate people out of their positions that are in departments that are subject to the regulation of Congress, not the executive branch, that's a huge power grab for the executives. And so I think most people don't want big government in the sense that they don't want there to be authoritarian power in the US. And the more we question the authority of our elected officials in Congress and just hand that to whoever's in office as president, think about if you had a president you didn't agree with. Would you want them to have that power? And so I think Project 2025 really jeopardizes the checks and balances that are built into American government in a way that makes me really concerned.
I would just push back a little bit on that, because the checks and balances are supposed to be between the three branches of government, not within the executive branch on itself by people who are not elected to those positions. I mean, this comes at the same time that we've had the Supreme Court overturn Chevron deference, which gives a lot of power to unelected bureaucrats by if somebody takes a challenge to court over the implementation of a law passed by Congress, saying that the federal branch, the executive branch and federal bureaucrats have interpreted it wrongly, the deference would go to them and their interpretation over the person who is filing the lawsuit. So I thought that was a great win, actually, for making sure that people have more power. The people who put the president in office to do things. The reason why things don't change when we elect people that we support is because 90% of the government is running on autopilot by these unelected bureaucrats. So that is a position of Project 2025 that I support. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and that's going to do it.
Quickly,
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, my point about checks and balances would be that if Congress oversees that agency and has final say over that agency, that would be the legislative branch that Congress is a part of, and the legislation would dictate what happens in that agency. And
right. Well, they get to say like how many positions there are and the funding of it, but that doesn't mean that they get the say over who's hired for those positions.
I mean, they would have the final say more so than the president of the United States, given that they're responsible for governing the program with legislation and providing funding to these programs. They would have more say over who the personnel and staffing are. It would be, the oversight committee would have to review that.
Okay. I mean, the Congress does, of course, provide funding for the agencies and determine the number of positions or the laws that those agencies have to carry out, but it has always been the power of the executive branch to appoint people to carry out those rules, and the executive branch to determine how legislation should be enacted through federal rulemaking. But I guess we'll have to disagree on that one, and it's going to do it for us this week on Rising. It was great being with you today, as always, Jess.
Another good Rising Fridays. I'll see you guys next week on Monday and Tuesday.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.